The murder of John Lennon in New York last night is full of ironies. He just started a successful musical comeback after years of withdrawal. In his last recorded interview, he said what he liked about New York was the security, even the autograph hunters who only wanted a signature and then left him alone. And the man charged with Lennon's murder was an autograph hunter, Mark David Chapman, who, it's alleged in court this afternoon, came from Hawaii specially to kill Lennon. Yet, according to Chapman's lawyer, he admired Lennon. He liked him very much. And why did he do it? Well, ironically again, when Chapman came face to face with a man he admired, a man known for his love of playing with words, there was no communication between them. I understood his words, said Chapman. I didn't understand his meaning. Well, no one can understand the meaning of Lennon's death, particularly the citizens of his adopted city, New York, from where Peter Hobday reports. He begins outside the luxurious Dakota apartment block where Lennon was shot.
It's now 14 hours since John Lennon was shot here at the entrance to the Dakota building on West 72nd Street in the center of New York. And in those 14 hours, there's been a crowd here standing in more or less silent vigil. And the flowers have been piling up at the gate.
He's not dead. They're just saying that.
You know, the doctor just announced it?
Yes, but I don't care. They're just saying that to get people to leave. He's not dead. John Lennon can't be dead.
Mr. Lennon was struck several times. We're not positive at this time as to how many times he was struck. He went up the stairs. There are 5 steps that lead up into the watchman's area of the Dakota. He went through that area into an office inside where he collapsed to the floor.
John Lennon was a New Yorker by adoption. And as soon as the word of the shooting was out, carried by radio stations across the city, his admirers started to gather. Their reaction was one of disbelief.
The body has been taken over town across to East 30th Street to the medical examiner's office. And the medical examiner's office told the BBC this morning that 4 bullets were in fact shot into John Lennon, one of which went through the body, one of which remained. It's thought that he died almost instantly. Ringo Starr arrived in the city this morning, went to the Dakota, and since then has refused to make any comment whatsoever. As for the suspect, who remained here after he had shot Mr. Lennon, he's now, at the present moment, awaiting arraignment and to be charged on first-degree murder. Nobody knows why he came to New York in the first place, or indeed what the motive was in what seems to be a totally senseless killing. Ringo Starr had chartered a private plane from Bermuda, and he got into the Dakota building through the back to avoid that large crowd out front, which had been filling up both sides of the street, growing steadily in numbers since first light. He stayed altogether about 2 hours. The shooting happened just before 11 o'clock on Monday night, as the Lennons came back from their recording studios.
I saw John and Yoko get out of the limousine. They walked into the gate, and oh God, let me sure, take your time. And then I heard 4 or 5 shots. They were ear shattering. I heard Yoko, and I heard a woman screaming. It was Yoko. She was screaming, "Help me!"
Later, the local police station, the 20th Precinct, released the official version.
Has been about the Dakota for the last several days. He was there on Saturday asking about Mr. Lennon. He was there on Sunday asking about Mr. Lennon. And he was there again this afternoon when Mr. Lennon and his wife left for a recording session. He was able to obtain an autograph on an album from Mr. Lennon as he left for the recording studio where he was going. He remained at that location all evening waiting for Mr. Lennon to come back. Sometime shortly before 11 o'clock, John Lennon and his wife arrived back at the Dakota in a limousine. They parked the limousine on the curb right outside the Dakota. There is a driveway into which they might have gone, but on this occasion did not. They got out of the car, out of the limousine, and walked into the archway area of the Dakota. To the right, as you walk in the archway area, is kind of a vestibule, which has a doorway, a glass doorway. This individual, Mr. Chapman, came up behind him and called to him, "Mr. Lennon," as he arrived at that doorway. And then in a combat stance, he emptied the shorter arms .38 caliber gun that he had with him and shot John Lennon.
The body was then taken to the Roosevelt Memorial Hospital a few blocks away from the Dakota. John Lennon was dead on arrival. This morning, the body was taken off to the city morgue, and Patrolman Tony Palmer was with the corpse.
Arrived at the hospital, I was informed that it was John Lennon inside, and I had Yoko Ono with me, and then I realized it was her. Matter of fact, I had given her a dime to make a phone call. She wanted to call friends, you know. And at that time, I just thought it was, you know, I was just trying to be...
What have you been feeling since then?
Well, you know, I feel bad about it. You know, I was a Beatle fan when I grew up in that age.
It froze me. I came last night for basically my own reasons to show support for whatever. It wasn't really morbid curiosity. And this morning, I think I was here curious to see how everyone else reacted.
Symbolized hope, a new life, a new beginning. He was a great man.
In spite of all the danger, in spite of all that may be, I'll do anything for you, anything you want me to. If you'll be true to me. In spite of all the heartache, but you may cause me, I'll do anything for you, anything you want me to, if you'll be true to me.
John Lennon's death has shocked people all over the world. Yugoslav radio played many of his records today. East German radio paid tribute to him for his anti-war work. His fellow Beatles were in a state of shock. Paul McCartney said today that he can't yet take in the news. He said, "John was a great guy who'll be missed by the whole world." George Harrison was tonight said to be stunned. He said that after all we went through together, I had and still have great respect for him. All over the pop world, the reaction was one of complete despair. Mick Jagger, speaking from Paris, claimed that he was shattered by the news.
John was shot on December 8th of 1980. Do you remember where you were that day?
The Friday prior is when I was, as a matter of fact, I was working with the Four Tops. I was doing their album at this time. And I was going home. I was exhausted. I was working at RCA Studios, which was on 44th Street on the corner of 6th Avenue. The record plant was on 44th Street between 8th Avenue and 9th Avenue. So it was like a block, 2 blocks away. So I was going home, and I saw Jack Douglas. He was doing Double Fantasy. They were doing the second single. And I went up to him and I said, "Hey man, what's going on?" We started talking, yada, yada, yada. I said, he says to me, "John's been asking about you." He said, "Why don't you come up?" I said, "Jack, tell John I'm real tired, man. I mean, I'd love to come and see him, but I'm exhausted. If I get up there, we're going to be partying, having a good time, and I got to be back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." I said, "No, I had to be back." I said, "I want to get home." So I said, "Are you going to be here on Monday?" He says, "Yeah, we'll be here Monday. We're working Monday night at the same time." I said, "Okay, look," I said, "every night for the past 2 weeks, the Tops usually stop around 7:30. We go out for dinner. I'll come down." He said, "Okay, I'll tell John." So Monday comes, we're working with the Tops, 7:30. I tell the producer, "I have to go. I'm going to have dinner." He says, "Well, they want to work through 7:30 tonight." I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "Well, the Tops are going to London on Thursday for a show. They want to have all the vocals out of the way, so in case they blow their vocal cords, they don't want to come back and have to waste time." I said, "Okay." So I said, no big deal. He waited this long. I can wait a couple of hours. I'll go see him at 11 o'clock. I figured I'll see him before he leaves. So we finished about, I guess it was 10 to 11. And I was running outside, breaking the mics down. And the producer comes out, and he's white as a ghost. And I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "My wife just called me and told me that John's been shot." And I said, "Get out." I said, that's terrible." I said, because you know I'm going to see him. That's terrible of you to say. I said, I'm not working anymore. He said, no, I'm serious. I said, come on. He said, oh. So the phone rings, he runs back inside. So now I'm still taking the mics and winding the wires up, and he comes out, and he's like, it's like, he's worse than he was before. And I said, what's the matter? I said, you look terrible, what happened? He said, John's dead. I said, you know, Dave, it's a horrible thing to say. He says, no, I'm serious. I said, all right, yeah, John's dead. So I said, okay, let me go inside and make a phone call. So I go inside and I call May Pang at her apartment. And I call her up and she's screaming. Did you hear what happened? I said, this is true? She said, yes. And I said, she said, I can't talk to you now. I said, I'll talk to you later. So I just got up in a complete stupor. And I walked out of the studio. I didn't shut the electricity off. I didn't take the tape off the machines. I didn't shut anything down. The lights were on. I just walked out. When I got home, my wife was up, and she heard the news. And I think for the next 6 hours, all we did was cry. I felt like they shot my brother. I mean, it's like somebody punched me in the gut. I mean, took my breath away. The next day, I was like, I called May. I said, what's going on? She said, I'm going to, come over here. So I went over to her house, and me and, I should say May and I and this other person, Arlene, the three of us just sat around and hugged each other and cried because this was like a family. We were like a family. I mean, John had worked with us for 3 years. Boy, it was like family to us. And the only thing that I hold, if any kind of regret, the only thing I can hold against Yoko was the fact that she didn't let any of his people that worked with John see him. That she had him cremated the following day. There was no wake. We never got to see him. We don't know what happened. We don't know where the ashes are. Not that, I'm not going to go to his urn and kneel in front of it, but just to say, goodbye to a dear friend.